art.
Hi, Emily.
Justin Hoopman, physical education, 6 through 8.
I'm Emily Painter. I teach choir, piano, theater, and other stuff like that.
Awesome.
Adam Pauly, I teach metals.
Sara Tolstedt, and I teach media.
And I'm Chad Gibson. I'm in the wood shop.
Cool.
And
Which, did you say metals? You teach metals?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. I am so jealous that you have a woodshop class and a metals class. I'm actually my name's Kevin Brookhauser. I'm a teacher here at York School in Monterey, California. I'm here at the school, and I teach in a class called Code and Design. And so we do some woodworking, some metal work, but we don't have like a full shop. One of the things I'm hoping to get is make it more robust that we, could have a metals class in a true like woodworking type of class. Anyway, great to meet you all.
So we just finished reading your book for our book study. The rest of our school is doing vertical alignment. So, our math teachers are working together and our English teachers are working together. And we're all singletons who don't really have somebody just like us to work with.
Right.
We all did a book study, and your book was our book study. So,
well,
that's here.
And I think the kind of classes that you teach allow for the kind of work that I wrote about to happen even more than any other class. I personally believe that you can apply this model to any class, but I see even more opportunities in the kind of classes that you all are teaching. That's pretty cool.
I have some questions for you to just start.
Sure.
First off, if you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got started on this whole adventure of the 20 times.
Yeah.
We read it in your book, but it'd be neat to have you tell us yourself.
Sure. Well, my background is in English education. I studied in college English literature and writing, and got a master's degree in English education, and plan to go teach English. And that's exactly what I did right out of college for a couple of years. And then in the year 2000, I saw what was happening in the Bay Area with the Silicon Valley and the internet and the tech bubble that was happening. And I was really excited about it, and I wanted to be a part of it. Technology has always been a passion of mine. And so I saw a big movement happening, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I spent a year in San Francisco working for me as a website editor, and learned what it was like to be in the corporate life, and learned a lot about what the Silicon Valley culture was like. Well, that tech bubble bursted at the end of 2000, and I lost that job, and was excited to go back into teaching, and went back to teaching English. That brought me here to Monterey, to the school that I'm teaching at now, and I was teaching English and history for a long time. And that was for like about 8 years. And then in 2010, I applied for the Google Teacher Academy. And it's now called the Google Innovator Academy, and it's a program that Google puts on, and they select a group of teachers every quarter or so to invite onto the Google's campus and learn about their campus culture, and then take what they've learned about where kind of the future is going, and try to apply those insights to the classroom. And so that's exactly what I did. One of the things that I was most interested in when I got to spend time on a Google campus was how they had set up a culture of constant innovation, even though they're growing so fast. One of their biggest challenges is how do they maintain the innovation of a scrappy young startup like Google was when it first started, when it's a huge corporate infrastructure. And one of the things that that I learned about while I was there was the autonomy that they give their employees to work on independent projects that they have a personal passion for, but that also has a real purpose. And I think they believe, and there are other businesses as well that believe that providing employees some amount of time to work on projects that they're personally interested in that have a real purpose, that allows for a culture of innovation to thrive, no matter how big or entrenched or how hard it is to change in a large structure. Well, as an educator, I found that education tends to be an entrenched institution. It's hard to enact change in schools. For a variety of reasons. You guys are teachers, you see that every day. But so I saw this model, and I also read this book called Drive by Daniel Pink that I cite a lot in my book, and he talks about Google's 20% time that provides that level of autonomy, and other companies that also provide those sorts of systems to allow for autonomy to increase innovation. So anyway, after reading all about that, I thought, well, what if we apply that same model to the classroom? And so I told my English students, when I got back to school, I told my English students, we're going to do this thing we're going to call it the 20% project. And I'm going to give you a certain amount of time to work on a project of your own choosing. And so my students responded like, okay, so is this like a research paper that we're writing? And I said, no, this is not even an English project. This is, it can involve, it certainly will involve some level of research, but it's not an English project. It's a project that has a real purpose and a real audience, and you need to go out there and find it. And what we're going to do is create that project, finish it, reach a real audience, have a real impact, and see what happens. Well, my students almost completely rejected that idea. They didn't want to take part of it. They wanted they wanted me to tell them what to do, and that they would do that thing. But me giving them that level of autonomy, telling them to pursue their own project, was really foreign to them. When the thing is, I teach high school, and by the time my 10th graders get to me, they've had 10 years of schooling in an atmosphere where there's this unwritten contract between the teacher and the student. And that unwritten contract basically says the teacher will tell the student what to do, the student will do that thing, and the teacher will evaluate the student on that thing, and everyone will go home and they don't have to worry about it anymore. And I was violating that contract. And so many of my students had figured out, got good at school, right? And what I was doing was kind of ripping up that contract for a portion of my class, and I said, I want you to figure out what to do. And the fact that my students rejected that, the fact that they didn't want to pursue something that was internally driven, gave me more energy and motivation to realize that this was something that was really important. I was really surprised that my students didn't want that kind of autonomy. So anyway, I forced it upon them. I call it mandatory autonomy.
Well, sometimes that's the best way to start.
Yeah, it's just, we're going to do this. And now some of my students, a small portion of my students, knew exactly, like they were totally into it. They were like, all right, cool, I'm going to get to work. And those are the kids who had grown up in Montessori schools. Because that is the Montessori movement, the essence of the Montessori movement is student-directed learning, and that students take charge of what they're learning. And that's part of what I'm doing. In fact, the 20% project, everything that I wrote the book about, it's nothing that new. It's been tried before over and over again, and I think with quite a bit of success. This is kind of a newer frame around it because we're modeling it after and people can understand it in a way, and when I tell people that, well, it's working for Google and they're obviously successful at being innovative, that more people will believe that there's value in it.
So are you still working through Google? Does the project still go through Google of any sort?
Do my students' projects, or does Google still use?
I guess, is Google still involved with your 20 times project within your kids?
Do you stay in touch with Google and the Google Innovation Academy and?
Yes, yeah, I do. I do a lot. I do a lot of work with Google. Google does not dictate at all or oversee the project that I'm doing. I just kind of took it on myself, and I was inspired by Google. But I do happen to do a lot of work with Google and training teachers on how to use Google tools and teaching teachers about the culture of Google. And in fact, I'm going to be going to Manhattan next month to sit on a panel at the Googleplex to talk about what the kind of work that my students are doing. This Google Innovator Academy, I can't recommend it enough. It's a really amazing program. And I do stay in very close contact with my cohort.
How many teachers do they normally take?
They take 50 per program, and I kind of think that they're hosting 4 a year.
Oh, but are they, do we need to contact Google maybe to find out about that, or how will we
Yeah,
find
there's a
out?
website. If you just Google Google Innovator Academy, it'll take you right to the website. It'll show you the application process.
You know, as being unified arts teachers, we live on the fringe, so we're always looking for innovative ways for in-services.
Yeah,
staff development.
right. And have you guys ever attended a Google Summit, a Google for Education Summit?
No.
No.
Remember,
Oh.
you're talking to teachers out in Wyoming. We don't have a lot of that. We have a lot of, I mean, our schools are first class. We have a lot
Right.
of computers, all that. Financial, we're in great shape. But like the innovative things like you're talking about, we don't hear about that so much.
Well, we should talk about hosting a summit out there.
Okay.
And I can help move that forward. And what we could do is, you know, if we can get enough people behind it over there, and we think we can get a big enough group of teachers, if we think we can come up with a couple hundred teachers who would want to attend a conference, we can
I think
we can bring out a team of teachers that will provide this summit. And we put these on all over the world. And we'd love to come to Wyoming. I know there is a Wyoming summit, but I don't know if it's close to you.
Okay, there's probably a,
Or Cheyenne.
yeah. Well, yeah, okay, we'll have Sarah keep in touch with you then, because
I
that
think,
would.
I think it might be in Casper.
Okay,
So that's right next door.
that is like it's close to us.
Okay, well let's follow up on that. If there isn't one near you, let's see about getting one.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, then the other thing, some of us are already starting to do some of this within our classes. Chad and Adam are doing a very similar 20 times project with 8th grade. And then Chad and I are doing a similar project with 6th grade. And we're finding it very successful, fun. I mean, we're getting our snags, but it's just kind of a neat thing. Oh,
It's in
okay.
Gillette. Last year, it looks like it was in Gillette, June 1st or something. So,
It was a what?
in Gillette, it was Campbell County. So
The summit was in Gillette, Wyoming, which is about 90 miles north of us.
Okay.
So we'll have to check and see.
Yeah, if that's something that is within the reach of traveling to, you should definitely go to that. But if you think you've got enough teachers in your region to host one more locally, we can talk about that.
Okay, Kevin, we'd like to introduce you to our administrators. Our head principal here, Ryan Mackey,
Hi.
Hey, Ryan.
and our assistant principal, Chad Johnson.
Hi, Chad.
So, a big question though we have for you is how about funding? Because you know, when you have the kids reach for the sky, you got to also have a little bit of funding.
Yeah, and I get zero money for this project. And so that's a big part of the proposal process. I make them come up with a budget for their project. And a lot of times they'll come up with ideas that would require massive amounts of budget. But I will say, and I don't have any funding for these projects. But there are a couple possibilities or glimmer, bits of hope. First of all, we now live in a time when you can do a whole lot of creative work, of amazing projects that reach real audiences, that make a real impact with almost no money. If you've got a Chromebook and an internet connection, there's really very few limits to what you can create. Do you guys have?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, see, now those are things, we do. We have a lot. Every grade level has computers. Unified Arts area also has computers.
Good.
Yeah, we have internet service. Yes.
So there's that. That you can do a lot without a big budget. That said, there are ways to, if a kid wants to create a campaign, I wanted to write a book, and I didn't have the money to write it, and I couldn't get a publisher to publish it either. And I've got a stack of rejection letters, which I'm very proud of, by the way. I love rejection letters. It means that I'm trying and failing. And so, but I knew that there was an audience because people were following my blog, and there was a big. I knew I had an audience, so I went on Kickstarter, and I asked my followers to contribute to my project, and I learned a lot from that process. I learned a lot about entrepreneurialism and following through, and so I do encourage my students to follow a Kickstarter model if they do need to come up with some funding. And sometimes it's not necessarily through Kickstarter, but they find a way to raise the money that they need to get the materials that they want to work with.
What about scheduling? Do you have them every day work on the project, or is it like 20 minutes a week?
Good question. The way I set it up, we're in a really weird school. We have a 7-day cycle. We have A through G days. And so one day a cycle, our class meets for 1 hour. And
Okay.
Is that what you guys have?
No, ours is strange too, but that's that's different.
It's weird. And it's totally rotating, and it's every day's different. It's really weird. But basically I have it set up so that it's about once a week we meet and we work on these projects instead of class. Now, most people don't have that. They have a cycle that it follows the week, right? And so I've seen a lot of teachers tempted to say, all right, on Fridays we're gonna have 20 time day. And what I've learned from teachers who do that is that they wish they hadn't done it on Fridays. Because what I'm hearing from teachers who do it on Fridays is that the students get the message that this is not important, that it's not a rigorous academic experience, that it's kind of like fun day. And while I hope that the project is fun, I don't want my students to think that it's fun day. It's work your butt off day. And so having it on a Tuesday does a little bit to send the message that this is real academic work that we're doing, and it certainly is.
That makes sense.
So I would pick, that's one model to look at. Just pick a day of the week and say this is the day that we're going to focus on the project. Now, some students take on projects that require them to work off campus, so maybe they're working out of their garage or something, so what I allow them to do, as long as they maintain accountability through me, I allow them to buy that time and use the time in my class to work on something else so they could do their, I don't know, their chemistry homework or whatever during my class time, as long as they've proved to me through their blog that they are working in their garage on weekends for their project.
How do you have like an hour with them a week then, or?
Yeah, so the way it works out for me is once a cycle I have an hour that I meet with them, and they work for that whole hour. I don't think the 20 minutes a couple days a week model would work as well, because, 20 minutes goes by so fast, and, you're getting materials together, and I like that longer period of time.
Yeah, because that's basically what we're dealing with. Even in the gym, as far as for us, our 6th and 7th graders are every other day for 42 minutes.
Yeah.
So theoretically, if you have 2 5-day weeks, I'll see them 3 days one week, 3 days the other. Then 8th grade, and these guys are on most of those schedules, we're on block scheduling every other day. So even day or odd day, as a calendar hits, we have 82 minutes. And so you will again see them 5 times in a 2-week process.
Right.
For the most part on quarters, as far as length of time to have those students.
Right.
So I'm wondering, for these guys especially, is how much can you get done during a quarter?
Right. And are you worried about not meeting your other curricular goals because by giving up one of those days?
I think just making sure like you have enough time to, if you're going to start a project like this, if I'm not even going to get a quarter of the way through the process in the quarter that I have kids, starting that process, or do you need a whole year to really?
You only have them for a quarter at a time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's tough. I have seen younger students have smaller projects that don't require a whole year to work on. Is there a way that you could turn your class into more like 100% time? So I'm thinking like the choir class, right? So you guys are spending your class time rehearsing and practicing and becoming better singers. But what if, and I'm sure that most choirs already do this, but if you found new audiences for the choir, and that you focus the entire class on preparing for that audience. I don't know. Does that may be?
Yeah, we have such a varied schedule between grade levels and all that. And like the wood shop and metal shop, they have certain quarters that they focus on certain things.
Right.
Their product, and I don't want to talk to them because they know it way better than I do. But for PE, where we do have them 6th and 7th grade all year, I definitely see where we can make this happen. 8th grade, it gets a little funkier because, again, they choose how many quarters of physical education they take depending on their interests in these other subjects. So, one kid I might have 3 quarters during the year, another one I might only have 1. And so to try to decide, do I fully try to complete it during that quarter and then do 3 20-time projects a year or 4? Or do I, like they were talking about working together, but then you hope that those kids directly go into the other class, and just that type of thing is just the things we're trying to iron out before we implement it too much.
Yeah, what I might do if I were a PE teacher and only saw my kids a few times, I would really encourage them to make videos, like training videos or exercise videos. Like trying to accomplish the goals that you already accomplished in this PE class, but do it in a way where there's an audience out there. So. There is a big audience for, yoga videos and workout videos and how to swing a bat, all of those things. And I just think that kids get really invested in your academic content, whatever it is, when they know that you as the teacher are going to grade it, they will do whatever it takes to get the grade that they want. But if they know that the work that they're doing is going to go meet a real audience, then I think my experience is that they really surprise you with how far beyond your expectations they can go. And so that might be a direction that I would take that kind of course.
kind of off of what you just said, when you grade these students, do you have a set rubric that you use for different portions of the project, or do you kind of allow students to grade themselves and, you know, I guess, argue for a specific grade for reasons, or?
Yep. So I have two different categories of components of this class. The parts that I grade and then the project, which I do not grade. I do not grade the final project, except there is a binary component that they must have something to show at the end of the year, something that's done. If they don't have anything that's done, then I do ding their grade for that. But if this thing is done and it's just a big hot mess and it just didn't work, then that's okay with me. I want my students to know that there's value in aiming high and trying things that you don't know for sure you're going to succeed, and I want them to have that experience. So I only grade the project itself on completion of something, right? But I don't assign I don't evaluate the project itself based upon its merits or its success, because those extrinsic motivators tend to undermine the creative work that I'm looking for. But I do grade the algorithmic components of the project itself. So I have them blog once a week, and I grade them on that. I grade them on their proposal, and I grade them on their final presentation and on their elevator speech. And I give them a rubric that I work with. As for the project itself, they're self-evaluating their project through their blog. So they're talking about their experience. And they also self-evaluate their project through the final presentation that they all give.
So how many people at any one given time are throwing a 20-time project? I mean, if you have a shared student body, how competitive? Is there someone that does the overarching, you know, this is how we're going to organize this, or are we going to have, you know, kids that have got 10 different projects going on?
Good question. I'm so glad you asked that. It's, you don't want that. You don't want a kid having to keep track of 10 different projects. What I encourage that is, first of all, you're really lucky that you've got so much buy-in in the school, that you've got teachers who want to pursue this kind of work and allow their students to pursue this kind of work. So that's awesome. And what I would do is try to find ways where each individual teacher can integrate their academic goals in one single project. So a kid's going to be working on this project across all the different classes, and I've seen this model work. I've gone to schools where the entire school has adopted 20-time, and this is the model that they have. And so, you know, for math teachers, well, the students are working on the budget and the market analysis and the data analysis, and they're meeting math goals with that. And for the English teachers, well, they're doing the marketing and the writing and all of that. With history teachers, what they're doing is really trying to understand who their audience is and where their audience come from, so that they can produce a better product. So trying to find ways to manufacture learning goals into this project is something that I think can work really well. There's one other point that was just on the tip of my tongue, but I lost it. It may come back to me in a second.
So would that help some of the problems that we might run into with quarter-long scheduling for classes? Where if they're working on the same one project the whole year, but no matter which teacher they're with, if that's the area that they were
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I mean, so I call it double dipping. And you know what I did this, it's what got me through graduate school is if I had a German literature professor and a developmental psychology professor assign me a research project, well, I did one research project that met both of those teachers' goals. So I did, you know, developmental psychology in this literature, and it's what smart students do with the approval of the teacher, of course. But that's kind of the model that I recommend when we have multiple teachers who want to pursue this kind of project.
Have you worked with other middle schools?
Yeah, I've worked with several middle schools. I serve on the board of a middle school here in Monterey, and we've been implementing this work there. And then also, I spent a year and a half in bringing this design into a middle school in New Jersey, Green Hills School.
How about rural? Have you worked in with rural schools?
Well, the school in New Jersey that I worked with is definitely rural. It's out in the middle of New Jersey, a very small town. I am quite familiar with rural schools. Most of my family lives in Nebraska, up in northern rural Nebraska. They're all farmers, and so it works. I've seen it work in rural schools. I've spoken to hundreds of teachers in the Midwest about implementing this kind of project. As long as there's broadband. And I think the rural communities are the ones who need broadband internet access the most. I don't think that these projects work as well when there's no access to the internet.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, the biggest challenge that I faced when I first launched it was I got a lot of pushback from parents because I totally forgot to communicate with them. I forgot to tell them what I was doing, and word got out that Brookhauser was having recess once a week in his class. And if anyone had been in my class, they would know that that was definitely not the case. But if you heard it third generations away, then that's kind of the message that you might get. So that was a big challenge. The other challenge was persuading the students to first take this on, because, like I said earlier, that a lot of them are resistant to this model. And then the other challenge I want to talk about is unmotivated students. But before I go there, I want to say that I did not face a challenge in convincing my administrators to do this. And I've heard over and over and over again. I've spoken to tens of thousands of teachers and administrators. I've never met an administrator who does not support this idea. And so that hasn't been a challenge for me. I'm waiting. Maybe or you guys will be my first, but with
I don't like this stuff. So now you can tell everybody you met one. No. Just kidding.
No, it's like administrators don't say like, oh, I don't like this innovative program. Now they certainly ask tough questions, and they should, about like, all right, prove to me that you're meeting learning goals. What are your objectives out of this? And that's why I get a lot of this stuff in writing, and that's why I'm so transparent about the project. And I want, I've got an open door policy in my class. Anyone can come in anytime and see what we're doing, and look at my students' work. And anyway, so that hasn't been a problem. It's been all positive. I sometimes do get other teachers who are like, oh, they don't get it. But I was going to talk about unmotivated students because it's a question I get a lot, and it's a real issue. You might just get some students who never get into it and just kind of phone it in and never seem to burn calories on this sort of project. And my response to that is, first, I often see kids who are unmotivated in the traditional aspects of my classes and become suddenly motivated for this in a way that they've never been interested in academic work before, because it allows them to pursue topics of interest to them. And suddenly writing becomes interesting because they're writing about something that they're interested in. So it reaches students who, who don't get reached otherwise sometimes, because the traditional academic environment, the schools that I went to when I was a kid, they valued a pretty narrow set of skills that if you could, gather information, take good notes, and remember what your teacher said and figure out what your teacher wanted, then you could do well at school. Well, the real world doesn't value that level of compliance in the way that many schools place a premium on. Employers aren't looking for compliant employees anymore. Employers and businesses and innovative companies are looking for problem solvers. And so anyway, that said, there are still a group of students who will just call it in and not really put in the work. And my answer to that is I can try to motivate them as much as I can, but it's leading a horse to water. And I don't let those bozos prevent this experience from happening with these other students who are getting so motivated out of it. I've never given an assignment, a major assignment of any sort to my students where I didn't have a small percentage of students who just flake on it. And so at the end of the day, they flake and their grade gets penalized. And I work my butt off to try to get them motivated, but I won't let them prevent me from doing this.
Now this is kind of off topic, but this is a big issue in our school. What kind of grading are you guys doing out there?
What kind of?
Just started standard-based grading.
Yeah, so there is. So I'm at an independent school, and so I'm not subject to the California standards, but I'm vaguely familiar with the standard-based grading. But our teachers dictate how they assign their grades.
What are some of the greatest successes that you saw or have seen that come through this 20-time project? Like maybe a personal project that you thought was awesome, or something that you read that was awesome that somebody did in a 20-time project in another school. What would be some of those?
Well, one thing that I'm really excited about is I've got a group of students who are working with the local children's museum. So the museum has recently formed a partnership with the fire station to try to create an exhibit that teaches kids about fire safety. And they were looking to create a panel that kids would press a button and they would hear certain sounds associated with the fire department. And so they asked a group of my students to come in and build this. And so we went to the museum. We studied what engaged little kids at the museum. We tried to learn from that process. And then we met with the fire department. And one of the things we learned from speaking to the fire department was the one thing that they struggle with is when a small kid is in a fire and a firefighter shows up wearing a respirator and making these scary noises of that respirator, the kids tend to run away. And so that was one of our goals, is to get kids exposure to the sounds and sights of that. And so here's a prototype of this museum exhibit that my students are making. And I don't know if you can see this, but anyway, they've designed these buttons and this panel, and we're working with this microchip here to drive the sounds and the lights and everything. And so anyway, I'm really excited about this because by the end of the year, my students will have an exhibit up that real world kids are going to use and learn from. And that's my kids solving a real problem by working with adult professionals. Totally proud of that. I've got another kid who is now studying architecture because for his project, he decided he wanted to learn how buildings were designed. And so we partnered him up with an architect, and they worked with professional grade software to build this eco-friendly house. And now he's going to be an architect. So there's just all kinds of stories out there. those are some of my favorites. I really love the kids who get active on social media, particularly YouTube. I'm a big fan of YouTube and what can be done with that. Maria is one of my star students whose project is still active after 3 years. Her YouTube channel is really popular, and it's all around young adult literature. It's really cool.
When it comes to forming groups or individuals or 2s or 3s, is there, because that was something that I thought about. Because I did a project thing a couple of years ago, and you end up with a group of buddies that want to work together, another group of buddies that want to work together, and then you have a loner that maybe is, needs somebody maybe to help them along the way, or they feel like, well, now I have nobody to help me. There's 5 kids working on that project, so they're going to get they're going to do really great, and I got to do everything myself. So,
well, I really push for kids to work in projects, and I try to convince them to recruit other students to join their projects. So some of my kids love working group projects. Some of them hate it. Some of them say the only thing I learned in group work is how to get stabbed in the back. And I'd say that I understand that. That happens out there, but I think it's so important that students learn how to work together and how to expose the problems that are inherent in group projects and learn from that, so that when they get out in the real world, they know how to work with other people, because you know what? Nobody in the real world is allowed to work alone. At least not very many people. We have to learn to work with other people, and we have to learn how to overcome the challenges that are inherent with those. So I highly encourage students to work in groups. I don't think, I found in my experience, any group that's bigger than 4 students is probably too big, because it's easy for one student to just kind of skate along. That said, if a group of 5 or 6 students came to me and they laid out a defense of why they needed that big of a group, then I would support it, if I believed it. And then I still do have some kids who just want to work alone, and they've always wanted to work on this one project, and so I haven't yet said you're not allowed to work alone. So I still allow students to work independently on their own projects. That's really where they want to go. But I discourage it.
Do you have any questions for us, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I would just like to know more about your location. Like, first of all, how did you find out about this?
Well, Chad. Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the spot. Well, it actually came from another teacher in our school. She saw something on an educational resource, and she was like 20-time projects, and she saw kids that were like, "Yay, this is awesome!" Yeah. And then she brought it to us because at the end of each day we have a half hour. And we're always trying to look for new and exciting things to do for that last half hour, because we call it enrichment. And we use that time to go and work on a content area, or we work on standards or
awesome,
whatever. And she came up with this idea, and a class that Adam and myself teach right now is called Product Development Manufacturing. And a lot of the things that we do in product development and manufacturing transfer over to this 20-time project.
Yeah.
And I was like on board right away. And then, so we were like, okay, well, let's go and talk to a few 6th grade teachers that will be doing enrichment and see if they'll get on board. And we met as a group, and she pitched it to us, and we were like, this is awesome, let's run with it. And it's been pretty awesome ever since. And so, and then after that, I was like, well, let's go and talk to our principals and see if we can do this for a book study. So I threw him the book, and then he was like, yeah, go do it. and that's where we are now. So
that's great. Well, I'm inspired by the work that you do. Man, that product development class, that's so cool. I wish I had been at your school when I was a kid.
Well, if you're ever out this way,
Well, I have been out there. I love Wyoming. Oh, it's a beautiful country you guys have out there.
Yes, well, thank you for taking time today and answering our questions, and we'll probably be in touch, and we'll look into this Google Academy Summit. Yeah, because
Hey,
that's
so let me make a request. I'm trying to get all of the stories of teachers and schools that are finding or trying this and finding some degree of success, and I don't want these things to be in a vacuum, and that's why I wanted to record this and share this with others. But if you guys would be willing to put together a few paragraphs about what is happening at your school, I'd love to put it on my blog to share with others and let people know that people in Wyoming are doing this, and this is how they do it, and this is how they've tweaked it. And so if you'd be willing to give me that, I would love to share that story.
Yeah, you bet. We'll do that.
Okay,
No problem.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I do need to run to my next class.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do we. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice
Thank
week.
you. Bye.
Bye.